by the 2n or the diploid state. Now the reproductive adaptations of angiosperms include the flowers and fruits. If we look at them, if we look for the angiosperms now, the angiosperm evolution is being very positively affected by the presence of two structures. One is flower, second one is the fruit. So the presence of these fruits, flower and fruit, gives them the evolutionary advantage, the huge evolutionary advantage with which they are just evolving from those gymnosperms, and they are totally different than other types of plants that was previously existed in planet Earth. Now these angiosperms are having the commonly known as a flowering plant, because these are the only type of plants which produces some specialized structures which can carry the ovule, and as also can carry the pollen grain containing structure in one particular organ, which is called the flower. And not only this flower help them for organizing all those different organs of ovule and pollen grains, but it also helps them to attract the pollinators, like animals, like insects, to come and just sit on them, and finally they can transfer those pollen grain onto them. So that's why they produce this flower. So this production of flowers not only give them the advantage of organizing their structures, but also give them the advantage of sexual reproduction. Okay. Now if we look for them, the key adaptation is our flower and fruits, as we have seen before. If we look at the flower, what is a flower? It is an angiosperm structure specialized for sexual reproduction. Now if we look at the different structure of flower, then you can find it is made up with actually 4 levels of organization. First organization, we call it the sepals. Then you can see this is just an extension of, we can say, a leaf, which is the enclosure to the flower when the flower just start to grow. Because if we think about the flower, in the previous time of flower, in the very starting point of flower development, we have something like this, which is called a bud, and this bud is here is the here is the sepals, and this sepal is just in green in color. In here we have the colored petals, and all these things is folded in structure like this. And then when it reaches it find all the necessary ingredients, water supply, light, and everything possible, in this buds start to grow and finally make a structure like this, finally make a fully open structure of a flower like this. Now here we have the second organization, which we call the petals. So now these are the most colorful part of this structure of flower is called the petals. Now which is brightly colored, and also they can attract the pollinators most importantly. Okay, so that's why the presence of petals are really important. And here we are having now the 2 important organ systems, which are the most important part for the fertilization purposes. So the structures which are sepals, which is protecting the overall flower when it is very young, when it is just begin for the development purpose. Then these petals are there for attract the pollinators. So both of these parts do not have any effect on the fertilization purposes. They are having the effect, but indirect effect. But the direct effect of fertilization is depend on the on these two, stamen and carpel. Now, if you look at the stamens, that the stamen is made up with the male sex organ. Here we have the anther and we have the filament. Now the anther has been held by this thread-like filament structures. Inside the anther, if we look, there are male spores in the male gamete. Sorry, not spore, male gamete. In the male gamete, there are sperms, and those sperms are called the pollen grains, and these are the pollen grains. Inside there we have lots of sperms, and the sperms are being produced and is being coated by anther and be placed on the anthers. Now these anthers are hold to the top of all these structures, because when the pollinators come, it has to be contact with those pollinators, because the actual importance of holding them is to transfer these anthers, transfer those sperms, those pollen grains from here to the pollinators. Thus those pollinators, when they travel from one flower to another flower, they can sit on this female structure and can transfer those pollen grains into the female structure. And if you look at the female structure, it is called the carpel, and in this carpel we are having the ovule. Then this carpel is made up with 3 structure. One is the stigma, which is the upper portion, which is the receptor for all those pollen grains. Then we have the tube, which is called the style, and through which the pollen grain will start to evade through this structure. At the end we have the ovary. Inside the ovary we have the production of egg. Now whenever the stigma whenever this pollen grain will enter into attach with the stigma, they start to grow a pollen tube, and this pollen tube finally enters into the ovary, and here on pollen tube will release into the ovary, and inside the ovary those sperm will fuse with the egg which is being produced inside the ovary, and they will fertilize this ovary, and then this ovary will convert into what is called a fruit, and inside the ovary we are having the fertilized egg, which we call the embryo, and that embryo is coated by the external layer which we call a seed. So inside this embryo we are having the seed. So the ovary, the total ovary here will be called the fruit, and inside this ovary what we are having the seed. So that's how the seed and fruit is being produced. This is the fruit is only an extension of this ovary, and the seed is only an extension of this meiosporangium that you can see in case of those previous picture, in case of those gymnosperms. Now if you look at here you have the seed, as you can see here. This is a layer of seeds, as you can see, and just surrounding by the seeds we are having this is the juicy layer, which is just an ovary. Again in this case too we are having the ovary, and you can see these are the several layers. We have the pretty hard layer, then you have the juicy layer. Inside here we are having those seed just bearing on. Okay, again in this case too we can find this is a very juicy part, and here is the hard sheet coat. Okay, now again in case of walnut, this is also fruit, but still the outer cell is really dry and harsh and very strong force, very strong arrangement of protection. And inside this protection we are having those presence of their embryo, and that's why you can see in all these cases there is a very important to preserve that embryo in very secure condition, because this is the embryo which gives rise to their actual body, their actual future generation, which is called the sporophyte generation. So that's why they need to produce that. One gametophyte has been produced, and the gametophyte's goal to after the fertilization to make a properly fully functional sporophyte, that the sporophyte can grow and they can hold the structure of gametophyte again. So this is the structure of alternation generation model. We need to produce those sporophyte, and as well as we need to produce those gametophyte. Now the sporophyte as well as the gametophyte have to work together to accomplish the overall life cycle of all the living plants that you can see nowadays. Okay, now this pollen grains can be transferred by wind, in this case by water, by animals, or from one place to another place. Now you can see by animals can be happen. For very good example for here is the cocklebarks. Cocklebarks, as we know, the barbs of cockleburs like this. So whenever animal enters there, for like this mammals like here is a dog or cat or whatever, goat, whatever enters into that the barbs of the cockleburs, it facilitates the dispersal by allowing the fruit to hitch on the animals, the fruit to attach with this animal skin, and when the animal comes in and they just rub their skin to get rid of this, that will fall onto the ground, and from there on a new plant will start to grow. So this is the way of transferring those plant seeds. So these are the way of transferring seeds. Now if you look at the way of transferring the pollen grains, there are most of the part is being carried out by insects. Very few of the part are being carried out by birds too, because example of hummingbirds and small birds which just feed on those nectars of flower. So we can see in both of the cases of transferring the seed as well as the transferring those pollen grains, animals play a very important role. So in turn we are playing an important role for the reproduction of plants, and in turn we are receiving very much help from those plants. If we look at the angiosperm life cycle, then we can find the life cycle is little bit different than all of the life cycle we have seen before, though it is consisted of the alternation of generation model consisting by a sporophyte and a gametophyte interaction, but still in this model we are having two layers of fertilization. That's why in this case we call them the double fertilization event. Now what is actually this double fertilization event? Let's look here. Now if we look at here and start our discussion from here, we are having the anther contains the microsporangium which actually make the sperm, or actually microsporocyte, that divide by meiosis and producing microspores. And this microspores, as we are looking at here, inside this microsporangium we have the microsporocytes which are 2n in nature. Now after the meiosis, this 2n will be divided into n, which finally produces the sperms, or what he called the spores after this. So production of this from this pollen we have the production of the spores, so not a spore, sorry, the production of this male gamete, which we call them the sperms. Now this pollen grain, which is actually having the n number of chromosomes, just start to come and attaches and just sit onto the stigma after the transfer via air sometimes, or via insects or something like that. When they sit on the stamen, when they sit on the stigma portion of this this overall female ovule structure, then after the attachment to the stigma, only one of those pollen grains start to produce the pollen tube. Now when they start to produce the pollen tube, they are having the two nucleus, as you can see here inside here. So we have the one cell of microsporocyte which is having the 2n. After the meiosis division, it will attach with that in the same place. So we're having the two nucleuses which is just coming out here in the pollen tube. In the pollen tube, there are two nucleuses produced inside this pollen grain, start to crawl down, and then this pollen tube will start to elongate and finally reaches onto the ovule structure, onto the egg structure actually. Okay, so here we have in another layer of division. In this case, if we think about the ovary and what is happening into the ovary, in this ovary there are ovule with meiosporangium containing of 2n number of chromosome, and this meiosporangium start to produce the meiospore, and this meiospore are having the n number of nucleuses, and this meiospore is being produced via the meiosis type of cell division. Now when they produce this meiospores, now here they produce meiospores. They produce many different types of meiospores, and most of them are being died, and only 7 of them survive, and the 7 surviving meiospores are being placed in orientation, like 3 in above, 3 in above and 3 in below, and 6 and 2 in the middle. So it's the 8 cell which just start their journey, exist their journey, 3 up, 3 below, and 2 in the middle. Now what happens here, they produce a structure like that, and here we have so this is the structure is being prepared, and as well as the structure of pollen grain or pollen tube production is being done simultaneously in the same orientation, in the same time. Now after this pollen tube reaches onto this egg portion, egg layer, or the ovule layer, or onto the ovary, then the ovary is being ready for the fertilization event to make a structure like this, 3 cells up, 3 cells down, and 2 in the middle. Now what happens, these 2 nucleuses which are coming from those pollen grain start to fertilize one of the egg which is produced here. So one of this 8 cell is just getting much more bigger to finally make what is called an egg cell. Now one of those sperm nucleuses fuse with this egg cell to make it a zygote of 2n number of chromosomes, and another sperm nucleus start to fuse with the two nucleus containing cells which is present inside to make a 3n number of chromosome containing cell in the middle, as you can find. So there are 2 nucleus. So just let me simplify that. So we have here at the beginning we have the pollen grain, and in this pollen grain we have the 2 nucleuses. So 2 nucleuses there, and so let me draw a nucleus 1 and 2 like this, and inside this ovary what we are having 8 there, we are having 8. So in this 8 we are having 3 up, 3 below, and 2 at the middle. And if we look at there, if we look at after the addition of this pollen grain nucleuses, so what happens, one of this pollen grain nucleuses fuse with one of these 3 which is an egg to fertilize them and make a 2n zygote, and the other nucleus of the sperm will start to fuse with the 2n nucleus containing 2n nucleus which is found inside this in the middle of this ovary, and to finally make a 3n nucleus containing 3n nucleus containing structure which is called an endosperm. Now this endosperm is providing the food source. It is providing the food source to the whole embryo to grow. Okay, so after this development, what we are having, we are having the endosperm as look for the food source, and here we are having the embryo. If we look at here, we are having the embryo inside, and this embryo is being protected by this endosperm, and then the endosperm is further protected by the seed coat, which is also having the 2n number of nucleus. Now when this whole structure along with the seed coat just fall onto the ground, two type of apical meristemic tissues start to grow. One of this meristemic tissue is called the shoot meristem, which we start to make the shoot region of the plant, and the root meristem start to make the root region of the plant, to finally make the growing plant, which is called the sporophyte. Now after the sporophyte production, on the sporophyte they start to make specialized structures like the flowers, and these flowers again are having the male and female regions of reproduction, and after that they again start to grow and produce all these things together. So this is how the angiosperm life cycle is going on. As we can see, there are two sperm nucleuses who will fuse with two nucleus of the ovary, and to fertilize two nucleuses. Then that's why in this process it is called the double fertilization process. Okay, so this is quite unusual, and this is really a difficult and complex structure of life cycle in case of angiosperms that we can look. Now if we look at the angiosperm evolution, then you can find the clarifying the origin of evolution, having lots of arguments regarding the angiosperm evolution, but still they have the fascinating challenge for evolutionary biology. But still the angiosperm originated at least 140 million years ago. That has been proved, and during the late Mesozoic period, the major branches of the clade diverging from their own common ancestor. So they are just being developed in the Mesozoic phase. Okay, Mesozoic era. Now if we look at the fossil angiosperms, we can find it is almost 125 million years old, as you can see in this picture. If we look at the fossil structure very finely, then you can find structures like that. We can resemble the structure of a shoot, a very fine shoot containing flowers. These flowers are not fully functional developed. They are also having the carpel and stamen, but they are lacking the petals, because they arrange those male and female gametophyte regions together, but still they are lacking the extra layers like petals, extra layers like sepals, to prevent this whole structure. And as long as it is evolving day by day, it is finally make a structure like the arrangement of petals and all these things to finally attract the pollinators. Because right after that, it has been shown that after the arrangement of these male and female sex organs, they feel the importance of the pollination purposes, because only after the pollination this kind of germination can be so easy. That's why they focus on the pollination right after the production or arrangement of male and female sex organs. Now an Evo-Devo hypothesis for flower plants can be said. In this hypothesis, how pollen producing and ovule producing structures were combined into a single flower, it has been stated. Scientist Michael Froelich proposed that the ancestors of angiosperms had separate pollen producing and ovular producing structure. As you can see in this picture, they have separate pollen producing structure which is called the stamen. They have the separate ovule producing structure which is called the carpel. But after that, when it is start to evolve, it is getting evolved, it finally produces all the structures together, put all the structures together, make one structure which is called a flower. Okay, so whenever we take a flower from a plant, that means we are just taking all of the ingredients for the plant to grow. So that's why. So they are doing it in a particular manner, but still, if flower is hampered in such a way, then the plant loses the way of the reproduction purpose, because all of the necessary ingredients are being put inside the flower. Okay, now if we look at the angiosperm diversity, that you can find the two main groups of angiosperms. One is called the monocots, another is called the eudicots. Now if we look at the basal angiosperms, there are less derived and included the flowering plants belonging to the oldest lineage, and also the magnolids, who share some traits with the basal angiosperms, but are more closely related to the monocots and eudicots. So if we look at their evolutionary origin, evolutionary diversity, that you can find from the one generation, first production of Amborella. After the Amborella, it is the production of water lilies. After the water lilies, we have the star anise. As you can see in this picture, we have the star. So Amborella is in the first place, then we have the water lilies, and After the water lilies we have the star anise, and then after the star anise we have the magnolids, which is here. After the magnolids we have the monocots and dicots. If you look at the magnolids, there are several different hypotheses of magnolid hypothesis as well as amborella hypothesis. Now according to the most of the scientists, this magnolid hypothesis is being proved right, because according to them these magnolids are much more closely related to monocots than this amborella and all this, because most of them suggest the amborella producers are come first in this overall evolutionary history. And if we look at this monocots and eudicots here, then you can find several different features among them. So if you look at the monocots, they are having only one cotyledon inside their seed, inside the embryo. That's why they are called the monocotyledon. In the dicotyledon here, they have the two cotyledons on the embryo. Okay. Now if you look at the leaf structure, the leaf veins are usually net-like in case of dicotyledon, but in case of monocotyledon this is not net-like, this is a parallel in structure. If you look at the stems, the vascular tissues are being arranged in the scattered manner in case of monocotyledon, but in case of dicotyledon these tissue layers usually arranged in ring-like structure. If we look at the root, then the root system usually fibrous nature in case of monocotyledon, but in case of dicotyledon it is usually a main root is being present, and there are branches and sub branches are being derived from those one main root. If we look at the pollen, the dicotyledon pollen is differing by the presence of the three openings in the dicotyledon, and the pollen grain which is found in case of monocotyledon is not possess those three openings or many types of opening. It has only one opening. And if we look at the flowers too, we can find differences. Now floral origin usually in multiple or three lining, if we can see in case of monocotyledons, if we look at the picture here. But if you look at the flower of a dicotyledon, the floral origin usually in multiples, or we can see here. Okay, floral origin in multiple, but here is the floral origin in 3 or multiples of 3, but here we are having the multiples of 5 in case of dicotyledon. So if you look at the sepals, we have the 5 or 10 or 15 like that. If we look at in case of monocotyledons, then the sepal will be 3, 6 or 9, something like that. So these are the basic features. So by looking at leaf, by looking at the cross section of vascular tissue, by looking at the root, or looking at the seed, looking at the pollen grain, we can tell which is monocotyledon, which is dicotyledon. It is actually very easy to say by looking at the different structures of the monocotyledon and eudicots. Okay, so we can see there are lots of different similarities, but still there are some differences between them. Now if we look about the evolutionary links between the angiosperms and the animals, then you can find here, after the development of the flower, so there is a vast range of those plants, vast ranges of interaction between the flowers as well as the animals, as well as animals like birds, like insects start to interact with those flowers, because they have to maintain their evolution purposes. So as we know, they depend on them. So some of the flowers, some of the birds and most of the insects depends on those nectars. They feed on those nectars. When they enters into the flower to take the nectar, they are indeed getting this nectar as their food source, but in turn the flower start to attach their male part, their pollen grain onto the insects, and that's how the insects can go one place to another place and carry those pollens, and when they sit on another flower, those pollen grains just sit on those female part of that flower and finally help those tree to make their reproduction successful. So that's how they are, both of them are helping themselves out. So the insect is in turn helping the tree, and the tree is helping the insect for the purposes, and that's how one with another doing these things together to make their evolution possible. So that's how the plant is evolving day by day by producing that from gymnosperm towards the angiosperms, and finally angiosperm is still evolving, and also along with that these insects and birds are still evolving. So this is called the co-evolutionary process, because both of the time as well as the birds and all these things are evolving day by day. Okay, so if you look at the human welfare, it totally depends on the greatly on the seed plants, because no group is more important to human survival than the seed plants, because we almost everything, whatever we eat is based on the seed plants, as we can see that this products from the seed plants, as we can see here, that the humans depends on the as food, as wood, and many medicines. Just take one example like cinnamon stick. In the cinnamon stick, what we can produce, we just eat as a spices, as food. We can use that as wood, and you can also produce many medicine from that, like here medicine for malaria preventive, which is a very the cinnamon bark is a very good place for making quinine. And also we can produce the pain reliever, we can produce the malaria preventive, we can produce ovarian cancer drug, and many different types of medicine from this bark. So actually we depend on all these flowering plants, all the seed bearing plants. So in turn, this angiosperm is not only providing the environment, the ecosystem, the diversity, but it is also providing a huge impact on the economic help to us, to us and many animals which is living on the planet earth. Now that's why the production of seed, flower is really and fruit is really important, and probably the most remarkable feature of the evolution of plants in the whole universe. Okay, now if we look at the destruction of habitat, the exclusion of the many plant species, what we are doing, we are just getting something very wrong for us. So actually we are depending upon all these things, we are depending upon all these plants. So if we are killing those plants, that means we are killing ourselves. That is the truth, guys. So don't kill those plants, stop killing those plants, just put them again where because we just tremendously depend on them. So that's it, and I hope that's gonna help you.